Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. The Monroe County School Board's decision to revise its COVID-19 policy 3 weeks into the school year has opened the door to even more questions.
Are siblings still allowed to go to school? If you have a sibling who's a close contact, are you then a close contact? I think these are things that parents still don't have clarity on.
This comes as some parents continue to challenge the corporation's mask mandate. Monroe County Sheriff Brad Swain says the county's 37-year-old downtown jail has outlived its usefulness and needs replaced.
To redo this entire building, to bring it back up to snuff would be $50 million.
And while much of the state relies on large producers for their beef, some have turned to smaller cattle farms to stock their shelves and supply their restaurants. Those stories, plus the latest news headlines, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, after a tumultuous 18 months, schools are hoping to return to some sort of normalcy this academic year. Last year, Governor Eric Holcomb issued guidance about social distancing, quarantining, and masking in schools. But this year, he's left those decisions to local school boards. And that has led to a patchwork of policies across the state. Ethan Burks joins us now on set to talk about how Monroe County is approaching this school year.
Thanks, Joe. You know, school districts now have lots of data that show in-person learning is much better for students than virtual learning. This is forcing schools to take a hard look at tweaking their quarantine policies, and in a lot of local districts requiring masks in an effort to keep their buildings open. But that can be tricky because some people still question the effectiveness of masks, and others worry that quarantine policies are too vague to really protect vulnerable children who still aren't yet eligible for that vaccine. Mask mandates are a contentious issue, even in schools where the CDC has advised all students wear them when they're in close contact with each other. During this week's Monroe County Schools board meeting, a group of parents were outraged that their kids still have to wear face coverings.
What about parents? You have to follow the rules.
One meeting attendee refused to wear her mask, and a school resource officer forced her to leave.
We shouldn't have to put adults into timeout, so I'm hoping that we can follow the rules and wear the masks and speak in turn so that we can have public comment.
The district is mandating masks for students, faculty, and staff regardless of their vaccination status. People are also required to follow a 3-foot social distancing rule. The district's new COVID policies eliminate the metrics that were used last year to determine if students were learning in person or online. Those metrics were based on the county's overall positivity rate.
That percent positivity now is not an accurate picture of the risk in our community because of changes in the number of people who are getting tested, as well as the nature of the reasons that people are getting tested.
Cooperman is also on the district's COVID-19 monitoring and advisory committee, along with pediatricians from IU Health, local health officials, and educators. It was this group that decided the old metrics were outdated and needed to be replaced.
When these metrics were designed, we didn't have vaccines for everyone over 12. The professional organizations weren't sort of speaking in unison about the importance of in-person learning.
So instead of looking at the community's positivity rate as a whole, the committee will evaluate schools and classrooms individually based on positive cases and conduct contact tracing from there to see who has to quarantine. MCCSC says this gives them extra flexibility to avoid moving the entire district back to online learning for unrelated COVID outbreaks in separate schools.
I appreciate this. I know that things are always changing, but the vagueness does worry me a little bit.
Scher and fellow school board member April Hennessy say they're concerned the policy lacks specific details as to how the district will handle positive cases when they occur.
If you have a positive individual in a home, are siblings still allowed to go to school? If you have a sibling who's a close contact, are you then a close contact? I think these are things that parents still don't have clarity on.
District guidelines say schools will be following the Indiana State Department of Health's definition of close contacts. The state defines a close contact as someone within 6 feet of an infected person for at least 15 minutes within a 24-hour period, and that period starts 48 hours after that person started feeling sick, because we now know that's when symptoms develop. Once it is decided that a child must quarantine, they may only return to school after a negative PCR test, medical clearance from a doctor stating a different illness, or isolate for 10 days. Fully vaccinated students and staff will not be required to quarantine or be considered as close contacts.
Our experience during the past school year and thus far this school year indicate that our mitigation measures are providing a low-risk environment for students in the classroom.
The Monitoring and Advisory Committee will continue to reassess the policy throughout the school year and make changes as needed, especially with the evolution and spread of the Delta variant. MCCSC says it will not publicly disclose quarantine information, but the number of positive cases district-wide will be reported every Friday throughout the school year. And Joe, the latest numbers are showing 44 cases across 12 different schools.
All right, Ethan, thank you very much. And the state reported almost 4,900 new positive COVID cases today. It's the first time in 3 days the number has been below 5,000. The numbers haven't been that high since January 9th. Hospitalizations are also up, climbing to over 2,000 for the first time since January. And the state's 7-day positivity rate remains above 10%. We're joined now by Brian Tabor, the president of the Indiana Hospital Association. Hello, Brian. Thanks for being here. As we reported, hospitalizations in the state haven't been this big since the winter. How are hospitals, doctors, nurses around the state coping with this new surge?
Well, thanks for having me. It's tough right now. It's very difficult. Our staff is tired. They have been working for months. The length of this pandemic is taking its toll on a physical level, a psychic level. It's very difficult right now to fully staff our facilities, and we're just praying that our vaccination rates will increase, because we know that'll help relieve some of the strain on the system right now.
IU Health is suspending half of its inpatient procedures starting Monday. Do you expect more hospitals to do that, or getting to the point of just being unable to take patients?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but virtually all hospitals in Indiana are already managing, delaying, really prioritizing non-urgent procedures. Sometimes the word elective is used, and it's unfortunate that we use that word sometimes in our industry, but for folks to understand what that means, it could be a biopsy for cancer. It could be a surgery to fix a hernia that's causing severe chronic pain. It could be replacing a heart valve. These are procedures that people need. They need this healthcare. But unfortunately, the crush of patients with COVID is starting to crowd out some of that healthcare. And we don't want that to happen. That's really not right, that we would have to delay that care for patients with something when we know what works. So we hope that people will think about getting vaccinated, not just for themselves, but consider the impact on others who need healthcare services.
We just have 30 seconds, but I wanted to ask you about pediatric beds, always at a premium. How concerned are you with schools back open, COVID rising, that respiratory viruses will stress the system even more?
We are very worried. Our frontline heroes, like a boxer, they've been out there taking these body blows, and they've been through a couple of rounds. We're in round 2. They're still standing, and I think they're going to work to provide the care for pediatric patients, for all patients right now. But we need to get through this as quickly as possible so that those folks can kind of go to their corner and get a bit of a rest.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
A new study by Indiana University and Rand Corporation researchers say COVID-19 vaccinations prevented more than 139,000 U.S. deaths from the time they became available to early May. Researchers were able to come up with that number by comparing states' vaccination rates, case rates, and deaths. They then used those associations to understand how the vaccine influenced COVID-19 outcomes.
We were able to sort of track that what would have been the deaths from COVID-19 had vaccinations gone to zero, that means not existed at all.
The study estimates that the COVID-19 vaccines prevented 2,800 Hoosier deaths in the last 5 months of the vaccine becoming available. Well, last week we shared why farmers aren't cashing in on rising meat prices, but neither are the restaurants and food service providers preparing it. Brock Turner has more on why the post-coronavirus meat market is leaving many in the protein business out to pasture.
Thick ass, thick ass.
20 years ago, when Dave Fisher decided to get back into farming, he did so with a goal in mind.
We really need to be able to control some things and not just be selling a commodity and taking it to the market and hope you get what you get.
He and his wife Diana raised cattle on 750 acres in southern Indiana. While Fisher wasn't immune to the economic downturn spurred by the coronavirus, his balance sheets look better than most. That's in large part because Fisher processes many of these cattle just a few miles down the road from where they roam on pasture.
They also stumble quite a bit, the big guys. They give us a lot of room for opportunity.
Four packers with large plants processing thousands of animals every day supply much of the nation with animal-based protein. Many facilities were tormented by coronavirus infections and forced to temporarily shut down.
I think it's definitely been an eye-opener for so many people that didn't realize that their grocery store shelf here in Indiana is empty because a big plant in Iowa had an outbreak in COVID. And like, wait a second, you know, Indiana raises all this pork, but we're not getting it.
While the majority of Indiana's ranchers are reliant on large packing plants operated by one of the four major firms, Fisher isn't. He's partnered with a local family business to process all of these cattle. He and the Sander family have benefited from working with a local provider, and they're experiencing growth neither expected.
Cut.
In Celestine, population 250, many of DuBois County's stakeholders celebrated the opening of a meat market.
And we've been planning this expansion for almost 2 years now, and we're just so excited to see this come to fruition. Especially like to thank the Fisher family. You know, they chose to go into business with us 17 years ago, and we've been able to continue to grow because of them and with them. We're excited to see what the future comes with them. You know, with all the new ideas and with all the new building, you know, we can try to expand things and go from there.
But this opening benefits more than just the local community. About 75 miles north on the Bloomington campus of Indiana University, chefs serving 20,000 meals to students every day benefit from relying on a processor so close.
We don't fall short on what Fisher Farm supplies us. You know, the broadliners, I won't mention the names, but there's some big companies that we work with. We're being shorted like a lot, and we're running out of that kind of food to supply to our students.
Shrivastava and other restaurant owners say consistently receiving product from suppliers is a challenge few customers comprehend. But another benefit occurs with the consistency of pricing. While large packers are able to offer generally cheaper products, the prices are more variable.
We have to make sure the students don't end up paying for the ebbs and flows of that pricing.
Because he doesn't send these cattle to large packing houses, Fisher says he avoids many of the swings in price.
Finally getting there with economies of scale.
While debate on Capitol Hill and in the courts will continue over whether the four large meat packers responsible for the vast majority of animal-based protein should be broken up, Fisher isn't going to hold his breath. Instead, he and his wife Diana intend to keep focused on their cows.
So either you're going to break them apart or we're just going to be chipping at them with a little chisel for a long time. And I think the public's eye is open more to that than it's ever been.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Brock Turner.
Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. The Monroe County Jail is 37 years old, and Sheriff Brad Swain says it's past time for a new one. And we visit Columbus, where artists from around the world are displaying their work in this year's exhibit. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
Year after year, PBS has been bringing you the news you trust.
We care about the things that are going to affect the lives of each and every American.
The in-depth analysis you need.
what we normally see in these big crises.
And the true stories that have to be told.
We're a place that people can come not just to find out what happened, but why it matters.
It's all thanks to the support of viewers like you. Thank you. And stay tuned to America's most trusted network.
At the PBS NewsHour, we have a long tradition of reporting on the events that define our times. New times have led us to find new ways to do what we do best. Now, more than ever, we seek answers to the tough questions.
The United States is still not testing per capita.
And get you information you can trust. We are the PBS NewsHour. Weeknights on PBS.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. The Wall Street Journal has reported U.S. officials are considering Camp Atterbury near Edinburgh as a potential site for temporarily housing Afghan refugees. Indiana National Guard Master Sergeant Jeff Lowry says the Secretary of Defense has authorized 4 military bases to provide housing for at-risk Afghans, but Camp Atterbury is not one of them. However, the Defense Department has agreed to provide additional housing and support for special visa applicants as quickly as possible. Well, 30 years from now, the way we feed livestock, pets, and even ourselves might include a lot more bugs. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports IUPUI is partnering with food companies and other universities to research insect farming.
Due to overpopulation, extreme temperatures, and irregular rainfall, agriculture is expected to fall 40% short of the world's needed food supply by 2050. Farming bugs to feed livestock and us could reduce the need to work so much land for agriculture. That means less gas for farm equipment and less fertilizer running into rivers and streams, improving the land, air, and water quality. IUPUI Professor Christine Picard is one of the lead researchers in the program.
So why aren't we feeding chickens insects, right? Why aren't we doing that rather than raising corn and soybean and all these other protein sources for feeding chickens, which is an unnatural diet?
The new Center for Environmental Sustainability through Insect Farming hopes to find insects that can be farmed that are safe, sustainable, and nutritious.
We've had an abundance of land, we have an abundance of water, and all these natural resources that we're surrounded by. And so we've been able to raise the animals that we want to raise without much consideration for the environment.
For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
Monroe County Sheriff Brad Swain says the county should consider replacing the 37-year-old county jail soon. But county officials want to exhaust all other options before going down that route. Adam Pinsker reports.
So it's a typical cell.
Monroe County Sheriff Brad Swain says his jail deputies could walk 5 miles a shift while working in the jail simply because of the design.
This is what they call a linear jail. It's, everything's laid out in lines.
Swain, who was a deputy when the current jail opened in 1984, says the design was obsolete from day one.
One of the tragic things in hindsight is that the pod system, which is the way we would like to go to, existed then.
A pod system allows officers to monitor inmate movements from one centralized area. It's safer and cuts back on the amount of time a jailer would have to travel by foot to respond to a situation. Swain says he'd prefer to see a new jail located outside downtown.
With room to with expansion, if you think of a hub with spokes on a wheel, you would just, as you might need, add spokes.
Swain says it would take fewer staff members to run a new jail, and that would save the county money. The county would also save a lot of money on maintenance expenses. He says it costs $500,000 to replace aging door locks on cell doors in the current facility. Maintaining the elevators, electrical, and sewer systems are also costly.
I think the jail study put to redo this entire building to bring it back up to snuff would be $50 million. Well, you've got a new jail.
Monroe County Commissioner Lee Jones thinks that number is closer to $60 million, but she's not in a rush to build a new jail.
And it's not easy to find enough property in the downtown area to create what would be a modern jail.
Jones was part of a jail study committee that met earlier this summer. The panel focused some of its efforts on ways to reduce the jail population.
We need to attempt what's called a warm handoff when people leave jail, which means that they're immediately connected with services.
That could include medical care, food stamps, or housing for the homeless.
We do have a program going that basically people in probation will interview people, usually within 24 hours of being arrested, and make a determination of whether or not they really need to be held in the jail.
County jail started shouldering the burden of caring for inmates with mental health problems as the state cut funding to hospitals around the state that can provide that professional care.
It used to be part of my job when I was a new patrol deputy that transporting a person for long-term care at Madison or Logansport was part of your job.
Swain says the Monroe County Jail has one full-time and one part-time mental health professional on staff. Contrast that with the jail's inmate population, which can range from 200 to 250 inmates or more at any given time. Jones estimates as much as 70% of the inmates in the Monroe County Jail have some kind of mental health issue.
The single biggest problem with this, and it's really a nationwide problem, is the lack of mental health care providers.
Jones is hoping money from the American Rescue Plan will pay for more intervention programs to keep the jail population down. Sheriff Swain says he's on board with doing everything he can to keep people out of jail, but he says there will always be criminals, and therefore there will always be a need for a jail. And at some point, Monroe County will need a new one.
Here, there is good financial support to keep the building in as good a shape as it is. So it's not as if this building is going to collapse in a heap the moment we move all the inmates out, but it's just tired and worn out.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Adam Pinsker.
Swain says it's unlikely he'll be around to oversee construction of a new jail since his term ends at the end of 2022. Well, the small southern Indiana city with a world reputation for modernist architecture is celebrating the opening of the third exhibit, Columbus. It features more than a dozen new downtown art installations. This year's theme explores the future of the Middle City. We caught up with some of the organizers and artists who say the biggest challenge was preparing an art exhibit for a city they've never been to during a pandemic.
We're spread out across downtown Columbus and Millrace Park. But I think you'll see sort of people, designers, artists, landscape architects who are really pushing the edges of what design means today.
This year's theme is called New Middles, from Main Street to Megalopolis. What is the future of the Middle City? And our program invites designers to think about the context and history and culture of Columbus, Indiana. It's known for its modern architecture.
My project is called Archival Revival. So what I did was I kind of looked at some of the research and some of the first exhibits that took place when the library opened in 1970 and discovered that there was this like African art exhibit as well as a symposium put on by the Human Relations Committee that looked at, had black artists, writers, sculptors. As a public artist, you go into like new city and you come from elsewhere and you try and learn as much as you can about the city, the history, the environment, the community, the people, and you try and have that resonate through the work, and so that it resonates with the community in a way that's like transparent and authentic. And there's nothing better to like see that realized, see it built.
I think a lot of what we're using in this exhibition is how can we bridge between the physical and the virtual. So the high school design team with their project Tunnel Vision is creating a sort of a movement through time in the kind of the shape of a river. So the tunnel has a river in panels on it, and then each of those panels takes you to a video that is about a significant piece of architecture in Columbus. We tried to build a bridge between the designers, wherever they would be, whether that was like Minneapolis or New York, and Columbus. And so making that virtual connection was one of the biggest challenges, but also one of the most important ones to make.
It's a moment in time where we've invited people to think about, what's transpired over 2 years and sort of how public space and being together in that is meaningful and important. And it's just the perfect time for this program to launch.
5 of the designers are Miller Prize recipients awarded $70,000 to create their exhibit. There are university and high school installations chosen that also receive awards. The exhibition runs until November 28th. Well, that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. Alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.